As I was preparing this reflection, I discovered a beautiful anecdote that captures the essence of today's gospel. Allow me to begin with this story. Many years ago, a powerful king was about to die. His reign had been peaceful and prosperous. He had transformed his kingdom into a place of abundance and freedom. But he had no child of his own, no heir to succeed him on the throne. As his end approached, one thought consumed him: the future of his subjects. How would they fare when he was no longer with them as their king? What would become of their freedom, moral values, and prosperity? These questions weighed heavily on the dying king's mind, prompting him to take action. He would select a successor for his people, not just any random person, but someone who would care for his subjects and sustain his good legacies. To avoid choosing unwisely, the king devised a social experiment. He sent out a message summoning all his subjects to his palace for the selection of his successor. On the appointed day, the people dressed in their finest attire, clothing befitting royalty. As they made their way to the palace, the king disguised himself in rags and positioned himself along the avenue leading to his palace. He stood there as a beggar, shivering from the cold wintry breeze, desperate for help. Those who passed by could not see beyond his disguised appearance. They ignored him. They ignored their king. However, one person stopped to help. This compassionate soul offered his own clothes to the poor beggar to shield him from the cold, taking the beggar's torn rags in exchange. He did this without knowing he had just helped the most powerful man in the land. When this kind-hearted man approached the palace gates, the guards refused him entry because of his tattered appearance. By this time, the king had disappeared from his position as a beggar. When the king emerged to address his people and select a successor, he began scanning the faces of his subjects, searching for one person in particular. As the king moved through the crowd, people adjusted their outfits, hoping to attract his attention. But the king wasn't interested in their beautiful clothes. He was looking for someone with a beautiful heart. Unable to find this person among those gathered, the king asked his guards if everyone had been admitted. They informed him that everyone had entered, except for one poorly dressed man who had been denied entry. The king immediately ordered them to bring this man in. When he entered the palace, the crowd hissed in disgust at his appearance. The king, however, did something that was surprising. He invited him to the front. The atmosphere grew tense with expectation. No one understood what was happening. Even the man himself was confused by the unfolding drama that centered on him. As this was going on, the king excused himself momentarily. Then, when he returned, a powerful revelation took place. He was wearing the very clothes the man had given him earlier. To everyone's astonishment, the king declared this man his successor, saying, "When you saw me as a poor beggar and gave me your clothes to save me from the cold, I knew I had found a kind man who will take care of my people. I choose a man with a beautiful heart as my successor over those with merely beautiful clothes." This powerful anecdote captures the message of today's gospel. Anyone familiar with the Gospel of John, especially the aspect called the farewell discourse, will recognize what I have chosen to call a powerful sentiment. It is Jesus' concern about the future of the faith community he founded. In chapter 17 of John's Gospel, Jesus prays to God for the future of the believing community. Let's take a pass the cue. John 17. I pray for them. I am not praying for the world, but for those you have given me, for they are yours. I have given them your word, and the world has hated them, for they are not of the world anymore, that I am of the world. My prayer is not that you take them out of the world, but that you protect them from the evil one. They are not of the world, even as I am not of it. Sanctify them by the truth. Your word is truth. This prayer reveals Jesus' preoccupation as he prepares to return to the Father. One thought dominated his mind: the future of the faith community. How would they live in his absence? What shape would their lives take? How would they endure persecution and the worst hatred? Who would tend to his sheep? It was to address these concerns that Jesus summoned Peter, intending to entrust him with the task of feeding his lambs and tending to his sheep. But before doing this, Jesus needed to be certain that Peter was the right person. Just like the dying king in our story, Jesus did not choose a leader for his flock randomly. He conducted his own experiment. His threefold question to Peter, do you love me, was intended to elicit an unequivocal expression of love. The choice of Peter was based on the depth of his love for Jesus. Christ chose a man who had been humbled by the experience of personal weakness and failure to feed his flock. In hindsight, the selection of Peter might seem like a tremendous gamble. Yet, over 2,000 years have passed since Jesus entrusted the future of his faith community to this simple fisherman from Galilee. And the community remains strong. This demonstrates that Jesus made the right choice. The world has often asked, why does the Catholic Church seem mysteriously indestructible? Why do the successors of mighty empires that once persecuted Christians now sit in ruins and rubble? James Hitchcock, a professor of history at Princeton University, offers this insight. He said, why in every age the church demonstrates her power to transform the world, the moral weaknesses of both her leaders and her members are at the same time both a scandal and an ironic witness to her divine character. Mere men could never have accomplished the good that the church has achieved over 2 millennia. Left entirely to man, the church ought to have perished at many points in her long history. Why Hitchcock's observation is instructive, I believe there is even more to consider. Great institutions are nurtured and sustained by intangible values like love, compassion, kindness, rather than brute force. Consider the case of King Saul and young David. When David spared Saul's life, despite Saul's numerous attempts to kill him, Saul expressed a profound truth about what sustains an institution. Saul said, "Is that your voice, David, my son?" He wept aloud and continued, "You are more righteous than I. You have treated me well, but I have treated you badly. You have just now told me about the good you did to me. The Lord delivered me in your hands, but you did not kill me." When a man finds his enemy, does he let him get away unharmed? May the Lord reward you well for the way you treated me today. I know that you will surely be king, and that the kingdom of Israel will be established in your hands. Saul proclaimed that the kingdom will be established in David's hands. What prompted this remarkable declaration? Why would a sitting king address a mere shepherd boy with such dignity, even acknowledging his future kingship? This unprecedented respect stemmed from David's magnanimity of heart and compassion, the qualities that define great leaders and enduring institutions. These are the qualities Jesus recognized in Peter before entrusting his flock to him. The same qualities the world celebrates in figures like Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi, and Martin Luther King Jr., and a host of other noble souls. The selection of Peter to feed Christ's flock teaches us much about leadership and succession. Great leaders lead with heart. It has been said that the most important aspects of life, love, compassion, humanity, kindness, feelings, and emotions, reside in the domain of the heart. Those attuned to these qualities make exceptional leaders. The impulsive Peter, who cut off the ear of the high priest servant, would not have been a suitable leader for Christ's flock. That Peter was rash, quick-tempered, even denying his master. But the Peter who sheathed his sword and later professed his love for Jesus had undergone a transformation. He was the one Christ chose to feed his sheep. Great leaders are known for their magnanimity and greatness of heart. Shakespeare argued that greatness is abused when remorse is separated from power. When this occurs, leaders become tyrants. But tyranny has never served any higher purpose in leadership. This truth is powerfully illustrated in the story of Emperor Julian, the Apostate, the last non-Christian ruler of the Roman Empire. Julian was raised a Christian but renounced his faith when he became emperor, attempting to restore paganism throughout the empire. He persecuted Christians, prohibited them from teaching classical literature, and tried to rebuild the Jewish temple in Jerusalem in an attempt to disprove Jesus' prophecy of this destruction. Despite his efforts to eradicate Christianity, Julian's reign was brief, lasting only 18 years. During his campaign against the Sassanid Empire, he was mortally wounded in battle. According to historical accounts, as he lay dying, Julian looked up at the sky and, recognizing the futility of his fight against Christianity, uttered his famous last words: "Thou hast conquered, O pale Galilean, and the world has grown grey from thy breath." In this moment of clarity, Julian acknowledged the unstoppable power of Christ's message of love and compassion, a power that no imperial edict could overcome. The question Jesus asked Peter holds an insightful lesson on leadership principles. Jesus would have rephrased his question to sound this way: "Do you love my flock?" But instead, he asked, "Do you love me?" There is a world of difference between these two questions. The first makes the flock the basis for Peter's care, while the second makes Jesus the foundation of that care. If Peter's service were determined by his love for the flock alone, problems would arise when the flock misbehaved or proved unlovable, probably proved unlovable, potentially changing Peter's attitude towards them. But if Peter's care for the flock stemmed from his love for Christ, then constant care was guaranteed because the love of Christ is unchanging. Therefore, before Jesus entrusted his flock to Peter, he gave him an immutable guiding principle. love for Christ. In leadership, you must have guiding principles that offer a moral vision for our actions. Just as love for Christ provided Peter with the foundation for caring for the flock, principles like integrity, honesty, humanity, virtue, and moral ideals should shape our vision as leaders. These principles remain constant while circumstances change. Jesus was deeply concerned about the future of the faith community he founded. This concern made him careful in choosing someone to address those concerns. As leaders, how do we select our successors? When Solomon succeeded his father David as king over God's people, he prayed, "Give me wisdom and knowledge that I may lead your people properly. For who can govern these people of yours, which is so great?" This is the prayer of someone who understands that leadership is a profound responsibility. In the Vatican, there is a private room near the Sistine Chapel known as the Room of Tears. It is where a newly elected pope prepares before publicly announcing his election. The room earned its name as Room of Tears because the overwhelming emotion of the newly elected pope often bring him to tears. In this sacred space, the new pope removes his cardinal's robe, dons the papal white cassock, receives the fisherman's ring, and has a moment of reflection before addressing the world. I believe there is a deeper significance to this room of tears. It symbolizes the enormous responsibility that awaits each new pope. Novelist Maurice West captures the weight of this responsibility so eloquently. He said, "The chair of Peter was a high leap, halfway out of this world and into a vestibule of divinity. The man who wore the fisherman's ring and the triple tiara carries also the sins of the whole world like a leading cope on his shoulders. He stood on a lonely pinnacle, alone, with the spread carpet of the nations before him, and above him, the naked face of the Almighty. Only a fool would envy him the power and the glory and the terror of such a principality." In this poignant West captures something of the immense responsibility that the papacy places on a man's shoulders. This is why Jesus was so discerning in choosing a leader for his flock, and why we too must be discerning in selecting our successors. As we reflect on today's gospel, let us remember that the welfare of future generations must inspire us to choose wisely. True leadership is measured not by the accolades we accumulate during our tenure, but by the legacy we leave behind in the hearts and minds of those we serve. A success without a successor is indeed a failure. In our own lives, whether as parents, teachers, mentors, or leaders in any capacity, we are called to nurture those who will come after us with the same care and love that Christ showed in selecting Peter. And this reminds me of a very moving story. It is the story of a man who suffered so long on his sick bed. He was so dealt with by a terrible terminal ailment that it got to a point this man told his children not to bother spending further money for his cure. Even when his children insisted on going on with the treatment, the man vehemently refused. He told his children, "Don't worry, I'm fine. Let's leave the rest." So eventually, the man died. After his death, when this man was lifted up from the bed where he had lain for more than 4 years, his children discovered something that changed their impression about their father. They saw a note where his father wrote about a huge amount he has left somewhere without his children's awareness. And then he told them, "The reason why I insisted you stop the treatment. Is that I don't want my sickness to take up every available resources that when I'm no more, people will find it hard to go on with living. I wouldn't want my death to create an aftermath of hardship and difficulty for your people. The money that I left behind should be used for your upkeep, for your education, and for whatever pertains to you. This thoughtfulness is the thoughtfulness Jesus put into place while choosing his apostle, while choosing Peter to take care of his flock. The thoughtfulness for the future generation coming after us, doing everything possible to make sure that life will become better for those coming after us. This is the most inspiring message about the care Jesus took in selecting Peter to become the leader of his flock. When we lead with love, compassion, and humility, we create a legacy that endures long after we are gone, just as Christ's legacy continues to transform the world more than 2 millennia later. May we, like Peter, respond to Christ's call with genuine love and commitment, not merely in words, but in deeds that reflect the heart of the Good Shepherd himself. May the love of Christ inspire us like he inspires Peter to tender and feed the flocks entrusted to us in different situations. And as we do this, may the favor, mercy, and blessing of God abide with you all. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.